Hey guys, welcome to the first pre-release guide video for the upcoming Magic the Gathering set, Guilds of Ravnica. Today we will be breaking down the Izzet and Boros guilds, kind of going over what cards to play in your pre-release deck, what cards to avoid, and is there any splashable colors / cards that will benefit these guilds. So let's hop right in with our first guild. We're going to be talking about Izzet first. And first up, here are some uncommons that if you open these, I mean, obviously prior to your pre-release, you're going to have to choose a guild. But prior to when you go into your guild pre-release, you're going to have to know what guild you're going to be playing in advance. So you'll get a pack. I'm assuming it's going to come with a seeded pack. If so, great, your chances are going to be getting some of these. But what you're going to be looking for in your pre-release kit is in those extra packs, or if you're drafting, or if you're two-headed giant, you're going to be looking at these uncommons. These are going to be the ones that pull you into these colors. Now, Izzet is a very spells focused deck. Guild, color set, scheme, anything, whatever you're going to call it. If you open up one of three of these, you're not likely to be in Izzet. However, if you open up multiples, this is where you want to be. So Crackling Drake, League Guildmage, and Weak Dragonauts all are great spell-heavy cards. They all benefit from casting spells, as well as drawing mechanics and things like that. The other thing is, with the Izzet guild, there's a lot of flying creatures. So let's go ahead and get into it. Crackling Drake is going to be your headhunter, I guess. Enters battlefield, it gets a card back, so that's A+ right there. But the more spells you cast, the bigger it gets. The other nice thing about this is it also counts cards in exile. So if you jumpstart a card, it still counts towards your Crackling Drake. Do not forget that. Playing this on turn 4 and it only being a 1/4 is just fine. That means, turn 5, you cast a couple spells, and then your creature gets bigger. And then this will be your win condition. League Guildmage is next. This one is, this is an interesting card. I didn't care for it as much when I started going through the preview season, but it's kind of growing on me a little bit because you can use the first ability in the mid to late game to help draw you cards, which then in turn fills up your graveyard and so on and so forth. The second ability is more of a win condition. So you've got your, deal 6 damage, deal 5 damage, whatever it is, jumpstart card. You can do this to copy target instant or sorcery spell you control with a converted mana cost X. You choose new targets. So this is a way to double up on your late game spells. It works especially well when you're drawing cards, right? So if some reason your battlefield is being controlled and they're going to target your Crackling Drake, your Weak Dragonauts first because those are the threats at hand. Very few people will target the Guildmage when they've got a flying 5/4 in front of them, or Weak Dragonauts obviously gets bigger as you cast spells. So this isn't going to be necessarily their biggest threat, but it's going to be used in your advantage in the mid to late game. So don't be afraid to drop this on turn 3 and then use its ability on turn 4 if you don't have anything better to do on turn 4. Weak Dragonauts is back. It's back. It's kind of like Crackling Drake, only it kind of feeds off of each other in the sense that you have to cast instants or sorcery spells to get it larger. So in a perfect world, Weak Dreadnoughts into Crackling Drake into a couple instants or sorcery, swing in, and you're good to go. So let's switch into what spells are you going to be casting. Beacon Bolt is first. Not to be confused with Bacon Bolt. This is Beacon Bolt. This is a sorcery at uncommon. Deals damage to target creature equal to the total number of instants and sorcery cards in your graveyard and in exile. So, and it also has Jumpstart. So this is a great spell. It's only dealing damage to target creature. So this is going to get a few things out of the way. If you can get 2 or 3 damage off of this thing, that's probably the best case scenario, or the average scenario. Mid to late game, getting rid of their big things, that's going to be your target right there with the Jumpstart. Chemist's Insight is 4, draw 2 cards, and then you can Jumpstart, draw 2 more cards. I mean, drawing cards is going to be the way this deck wins, right? Hypothesizzle is next. Drawing 2 cards for 5 mana. It's a little rough, but in the late game, you could deal 4 damage to target creature, stuff like that for discarding a non-land card. Don't be afraid to cast this with just drawing the 2 cards, right? That's instant speed. You can do it at the end of your opponent's turn. Just like with the Chemist Insight, it's a little bit more on the mana cost, but if there's a target that they just played on the battlefield, maybe you want to clear up the battlefield a little bit, things like that. This is a great way to kind of build your hand as well as come to parity as far as the battlefield's concerned. Some other spells that you're going to be looking at, Graft Havoc Punch is next. It's a common. Target creature you control deals damage equal to the power to target player. Jumpstart. So this is one of those cards where like your Crackling Drake is up to like a 6/6, a 7/7 for 4 mana. You can deal target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target player. So you're targeting your Crackle Drake, target your opponent, and boom, damage. Don't be afraid to use this early, right? Let's say you've got a 3/3, a 4/4 on the battlefield. Use this, and then you've also got now that it's in your graveyard, it's fueling your Crackling Drake, and it gets better, the next time around. Maximize Velocity is next. This is a +1/+1, gains haste until end of turn for 1 mana with Jumpstart. Now, this is an interesting card in the sense that you're going to want to cast, your instinct is to cast this on the 3 creatures we just were talking about, your Crackling Drakes, your Weed Dragnots, things like that. But you're really going to want to save this for your late game. Now, it has Jumpstart, so you can cast it on those early creatures, those turn 3, turn 4 creatures. But the thing that you need to remember is this is +1/+1 and haste. That's where you're going to catch your opponent off guard. And it's only 1 mana in there. We're going to talk about another card here in a second that's going to pair well with with this spell. Sonic Assault's next. This is 1 red, 1 blue, 1 generic for an instant and common. Tap target creature. It deals 2 damage to that creature's controller. It's got Jumpstart. Again, incidental damage isn't bad. Tapping down a creature at instant speed, removes a blocker, removes an attack. It doesn't remove an attacker. It stops an attacker. So if you're going to tap this during tap someone's creature during attacks, obviously you need to do it before the attack phase. Don't make that mistake. But getting 4 damage and tapping down 2 creatures for 6 mana, really 3 mana over the course of 2 turns, isn't that bad. Again, fueling your Spells Matters deck. There's a couple other ones that we'll talk about here in a minute. Direct Current is next. 3 mana, 2 damage to any target with Jumpstart. This is an okay card. It's not a very good rate, but 4 damage across 2 turns isn't that bad. It pretty much kills anything on turn 1 or turn 2 that your opponent plays, so you can easily get this down and drop out their turn 1, turn 2, and then in the late game use that extra 2 damage to either kill your opponent, or you can use it to help finish off a creature that's got combat damage, things like that. Goblin Electromancer's next. This is a reprint. It's a great card in limited. It's a common 2/2, so it's a 2/2 for 2, and your instants and sorcery spells cost 1 less to cast. Again, great card because everything else gets better, right? Unfortunately, you're gonna have if you can get this on turn 2, that's the best spot possible, absolutely, because your turn 3, turn 4, and turn 5, they're all gummed up by those going on curve and things like that. Izzet Locket is next. Turn 3, this is a little rough, and turn 4, trying to take a turn off. This is almost a trap. I'm not gonna call it that just because it can draw you 2 cards in the late game. Obviously, paying 7 mana to draw 2 cards is a little rough. But if you can find a way to cast this not on turn 2, not on turn 3, but maybe on turn 4, turn 5, get a couple uses out of the mana ability, and then sacrifice it to draw the cards to kind of refill your hand. This is kind of like the worst draw spell in the deck. But if you need a draw spell, this is what you need to do. Okay, so let's talk about defending, since we're all about the instant speed, sorcerer speed, damage. We're going to need a way to defend off creatures. Wall of Mist and electrostatic field is next. These are both walls that are great defenders. 2 mana for each of them, 05, 04 respectively. The field, on the other hand, has a little bit extra bang for its buck. It's whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. So this is a great card, not only in Two-Headed Giant, but it's still good in every other limited format, sealed, draft, any pre-release event that you're going to be playing in. This incidental damage is how you're going to win games with this deck. There isn't a lot of deal X amount of damage to target player, deal high amounts to target player. There's not a lot of that. So there's going to be a lot of pinging, a lot of small 1, 2, sometimes 3 damage here or there. And what you really need to look for is, how am I going to get over 20, right? And the deck's all about casting spells. So if your Crackling Drake, if your Wee Dreadnoughts does not come through, they get killed, they get removed, maybe they've got a blocker, this is a way to kind of get that extra damage through. Whether you're casting, hasty spells to give your things +1/+1 to deal 1 damage, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. Murmuring Mystic is next. This is a 1/5 for 4 mana. Again, not the best rate, but the ability is where is what you're looking for. It's at uncommon. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, create a 1/1 blue bird illusion creature token with flying. We talked all about those small incidental damage things. Getting a 1/1 flyer in for 1 damage isn't bad at all. Definitely not. And it's a 1/5 on the other hand, so it's a great blocker. Not too shabby. Okay. The other blocker, the other thing that we have that's great early game and great late game. So early game blocker, 1/3 for 2 mana pass wall adept. This is a human wizard at common. This is going to be a very interesting card in the sense that I don't think it's going to get played a lot. The nice thing about it is its ability to play early game and then also play late game. So early game, you're blocking, you're fending off, right? You're fending off the 2/2s and the 1/1s and all that, that come down on turn 1, turn 2. But also in the late game, especially since it's not a tap ability, right? So in the very, very late game, you got a creature that comes down and let's say they've got some blockers or whatever. You're trying to get through that last 4 or 5 points of damage. You can drop this for 2 and then pay the 3 mana. Target creature can't be blocked this turn. So you make your creature unblockable, get through that those last couple points of damage. This will win games, right? So when you draw this, right, let's say it's turn 3, turn 4, do not play it. Don't play it out because it's not in its best case scenario. Best case scenario is turn 2. Best case scenario, turn 5, turn 6, turn 7, right? Don't play this in the mid game. Very, very, very late game. This is your win condition for one of your big creatures. All right. Let's talk about your control magic. Sinister Sabotage is next. This is your counter spell. Catch all, uncommon. Counter target spells for 3 mana, Surveil 1. It's in Dimir, but it's still a solid card to play. You're going to want to hang on to this until late game, right? You're going to want to counter their big creature, their win condition, their mythic. What are they saving their mana up to do? The thing that affects the board the most, destroy target creature. You'll use this to protect your Crackling Drakes, your Wee Dreadnoughts, things like that. Unexpected Disappearance is next. Return target creature to its owner's hand. Surveil 1. Again, drawing, not necessarily drawing that card, but being able to decide, do I need this in my hand? Do I need it in my graveyard? Does it need to, or does, where's it going to be best suited? Disdainful Strokes, kind of like your Sinister Sabotage. It's going to counter their most important thing, right? So counter target spell with the converted mana cost 4 or greater. So keep this for your late game, right? Obviously, you're going to be playing 2 or 3 counter spells. If you can get the Disdainful Stroke in there, that would be perfect because that's going to counter the heavy hitters in your opponent's deck. So some instants and sorceries and some other removal spells, combat tricks, things like that. Sure Strike is back in it, a common, +3/+0, and gains first strike until end of turn. Most times the first strike won't matter much. You're really trying to get this into your graveyard and cast for your Wee Dreadnoughts and your Drakes. And again, we kind of keep going back to those 2 creatures because those are the 2 creatures that matter most in this deck. And that's really what's going to kind of edge you into this deck is if you have 2 or more of those cards. If you don't, this is a very, very hard deck to play. Lava Coil is next. 2 mana. Lava Coil deals 4 damage to target creature. If that creature would die this turn, exile it instead. This is a great way to get rid of, just nuisance creatures. Exiling is fine, especially if you're against like a Golgari Undergrowth type of deck. So keep that in mind. This doesn't necessarily have to be stacked to get, it doesn't have to necessarily kill the thing to be of value. Capture Sphere is next. This is just a flash, tap target creature doesn't tap until during its controller's on stat. This is just great premium removal that blue is used to. Common, you'll play as many as you have. Obviously, if you've got 5, don't play all 5. But 3, the third one kind of gets lackluster, but 2 or 3 is like perfect. And then the trap. This is the trap, right? Maximize altitude is a trap. Let me tell you why it's a trap. Most of the creatures that you're going to be playing already have flying or have the ability to gain flying. So normally I would say this is a fantastic card, right? Giving creature flying for 1 turn, +1/+1 is great. The jumpstart is even better, right? It looks like a fantastic card, but on its face value, not so good. At least in the Izzet deck, right? Now, if you're in, if you're in, like, let's say, Boros, for example, Boros would be a great deck to have it because Boros doesn't have a lot of flyers, right? Or Silencia is another one, so you can splash blue for them. We'll talk about those guys tomorrow. But at the end of the day, this is a trap, right? Cards that you could play, would make it better is the Fresh-Faced Recruit, Goblin, Bannerets. Those guys would benefit from having the flying, but they're not. Those guys are not going to work in the Izzet deck, right? You don't want to pay 2 to give the Banneret +2/+0 until end of turn just to mentor one of your smaller creatures. There's creatures that you could do a one-time cost that will help you in that, and that's what we're going to talk about right here. The first strike for Fresh-Faced Recruit, 2/1 for 2 mana. That's not where you want to be at. No. Where you want to be at, the cards that you want to use, right, from other guilds besides the Dimir ones that we talked about, but these ones, or the Dimir ones that we're going to talk about, is the Bodyguard. This is a mentor ability that you can get behind, right? So 3 power allows you to ramp up any of your creatures that we've talked about prior to this, right, for 3 mana. You're going to be attacking with those creatures anyway. So even if you get a +1/+1 counter out of this guy, and force them to block the Bodyguard, and like if the Bodyguard, let's say the Bodyguard trades and you get a +1/+1 on your Drake, it did its job. You played 3 mana to get rid of one of their decent creatures, right? This deals 3 damage, right? And then Bargaining Sergeant's next. So 4/2 with haste and mentor for 5. It's not too bad, right? It's not. I like the Bodyguard better because it's quite a bit cheaper, and it gives you, it doesn't die to, it dies to less things, right? The 4/2 on the Sergeant is gonna be more favorable in your combat, right? Because it's gonna be able to trade up, take down something that's got 4 defense or whatever. But at any rate, still, these are the 2 kind of red cards from other guilds that you want to use. Now, speaking of other guilds, Dimir has got a lot of things in common with what Izzet's trying to do. Night Veil Sprite, Whispering Agent, and Watcher in the Mist, those are all really, really good creatures from the Dimir set that you can use. So the Sprite it's got flying, it's a 1/2 for 2 mana, and whenever she attacks, you surveil 1. So talk about a card advantage, right? Putting cards in your graveyard, putting cards on top of your library. Things, this is how you're going to shape what you're doing, right? She's got flying, so she fits in with your flying theme. Whispering Agent's next. It's got flash. When it enters the battlefield, you surveil 1. It's 3 mana for a 3/2, right? You can play it at the end of the turn. You can use it as a removal spell. You get the surveil out of it. Great card. Watcher in the Mist, 5 mana for 3/4 flying. When it enters the battlefield, you surveil 2. This is a good finisher, right? People don't think that this is a solid finisher. It's only 3 damage. But over the course of 4 or 5 attacks, like we're talking that you're talking that instant amount of, the incremental small amounts of damage, incremental damage from here or there. 3 damage over the course of 4 or 5 turns is a lot of damage. If this thing goes unchecked, you're looking to have the game closed out really, really quick. So don't be afraid to play this. 1 or 2 of these, definitely. All right, let's move on to Boros. Boros has got some good cards. They're all about the creatures, all about attacking quick on the curve. And we're going to start with the gold cards. Boros Challenger is first, 2/3 for 2 mana. Perfect stats right there. Play it. Play it every time. But it also has Mentor, right? And it's got 4 mana. It gets +1/+1 till end turn. I don't know how often you're going to be using that till the late game to ramp up your creatures that don't do much, your 1/1s and things like that. But 2/3 for 2 mana is above the curve. Legion Guild Mage is next. Same thing. This is kind of a late game type of card, right? 2/2 for 2 is not bad, but play the Challenger first. Tapping down the creatures is kind of what you're going to be doing. Tapping down their best thing so that you can take out, so you can attack through them is going to be where it's at. This deck needs to attack through things. So being able to tap down their best thing and then, late game dealing 3 damage to each opponent, it's kind of a really, really crappy conversion rate. Definitely gets much, much better in 2-headed giant because it's 6 damage versus just the 3. So 6 damage for 6 mana is not that bad. Truefire Captain is next, 4 mana for a 4/3 with Mentor. And whenever it's dealt damage, it deals that much damage to target player. So if you can find a way, to work in some damage to target creature that's not, 2 or less, this is a great way to have that alternate win condition. The fact that it has Mentor and it's 4, it can ramp up your 1-drops, your 2-drops, your 3-drops, and even some 4-drops for that matter. So it's a solid card, definitely solid. But don't mistake that damage spell thing. And it's deal damage. It's not combat damage. It's deals damage. So really, really good card. So let's talk about the curve real quick. So the curve is strong. Very, very strong with Boros. So first up, we've got our 1-drops, Haunted Witness, Healer's Hawk, and Hazard Marshal. All solid cards for different reasons. The Witness replaces itself with a 1/1 lifelinker. The Bird, we don't normally play 1/1 birds very often, but this one's got lifelink, so the incremental life gains, a real thing. Plus Mentor. 1/1s in Boros are going to be fantastic, right? Every other guild you want to kind of stay away from, unless they've got something that's kind of working for it. I think the 1/1 in Boros is going to have a huge impact on the game. People are kind of shuddering it and saying, it's okay. But since it's got flying, that makes it even better. This makes it a perfect target for Mentor, right? So that's what you're looking at. The Marshal, being able to create 1/1s. Lifelink, that's okay. It's not the best. So, out of the 3 of these, obviously the Healer Hawk's first, and then I think the Witness is second. The Marshal, I think, is third. Even though, creating those 1/1 soldier tokens, that's a solid ability. But I think, the having to attack with the 2 other creatures, that's going to cause people to make bad decisions. I think the Healer's Hawk is the perfect example of how you're going to benefit from the Mentor ability. So moving on to the rest of the 1 and 2 drop, obviously Goblin Banneret's next. This 1/1 Mentor is going to be really strong for you, right? Being able to pump him up for 2 mana for +2/+0, that's a good rate. That's a really, really good rate, especially for a repeatable ability. So this guy could eventually power up, your 4 and 5 drops with just a few, +1/+1 or +2/+0 activations. So this is you'll play every single one of these you get. Great for turn 1 play, great for late game, things like that. It doesn't have haste, so it's kind of a little. You would think it had haste, but it doesn't. Sunhome Stalwart is next. Mentor +2/2 for strike for 2 mana. It has all the great cards. It's got all the great abilities, right? 2/2 for 2 is great on its own. First strike is great. Mentor, being able to mentor up, your 1-drops and your 1/1s and things like that. Just so good. So good. Moving on to the 3-drops and up. Rock Chargers next. Giving a creature flying. We talked about the 1/1s, right? And how strong they're going to be. And the 1/1 flyers are so much stronger. This will win you games. right? This will help build your board. Those 1/1s will become 2/2s, and those 2/2s will become 3/3s because of the mentor ability. If you can patch together these commons and uncommons, this is going to be a very strong, very, very aggressive deck. Sky Knight Legionnaires next, 3 mana for a 2/2 flying haste. Again, flying haste, great card. It's at common, so you're going to get plenty of them. Let's see, the Patrol's next, 2/3 for 4 mana flying vigilance. It's got mentor. This is a little bit more expensive than I'd like to see. To be honest with you, if they dropped if it was 3 mana for flying mentor, I'd be all over it. But paying the 1 extra for vigilance is okay. If you could target this with one of your higher mentor cards and get it up to a 3/4, that would be perfect. That's the best case scenario right there. Best case scenario. Some other cards, so your 4 drops and 5 drops and 6 drops. So you've got Hammer Dropper, 4 mana for a 5/2 with mentor. This one's going to be a little bit tricky, right? If you can get this card through 2 attacks, you're on good footing, right? Even if the creatures block, right? If you can save this creature and mentor it twice, then you're in good footing, because chances are you've killed at least 1 creature with it, and you've pumped up 2 other creatures on your side. So that's really kind of the best case scenario for this card. Magical Christmas Land is giving this thing a +1/+1 counter, or somehow beefing up that defense, or give it some type of evasion, whether that's flying. Hint, hint, Mr. Rock from the previous slide. If you can get this thing flying, then you're all set. So we already talked about the Sergeant. 5 drop, 4/2 with mentor, solid card. The Giant, this is kind of like your finisher. This is the way you're going to end the game, right? Whenever it attacks, it deals 1 damage to each creature defending player controls. This is a great way to clear out those Silencia cards, clear out those Izzet cards, those 1/1 birds, all that stuff, right? This even works good against Dimir, right, with their small 1 drops and their rats and things like that. This is a great card to kind of make combat that much more calculative. So at the end of the day, solid card. 1, maybe 2 in your deck. Remember, this is your finisher. No more than that. And then to give things haste, Torch Courier is next. 1 mana, 1/1 with haste. It's good early. It's good late. Obviously, if you play this, you've got this you draw this on turn 5 or 6, and you're not playing anything, just hold on to it, right? Just hold on to it. There's no sense in playing, especially if the board is all gummed up. The 1/1 on the battlefield is not going to be the best thing. If you've got any jumpstart cards in your hand, or in your deck, this is a great card to kind of discard a jumpstart and things like that. But at the end of the day, the best way to use this card is when you play your turn 6, turn 7, 5 or 6 drop, you play this, sacrifice it, target creature gains haste. There you go. Finish the game. Some control magic. Luminous Bonds is next. It's 3 mana for enchant creature, can't attack or block. Justice Strike is 2 mana, deals target creature deals damage to itself equal to its power. Again, solid removal card, probably going to be better after combat, so you're probably going to 2-for-1 yourself, but this is a great way to get rid of their best thing. Integrity to Interventions next. Target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. Intervention deals 3 damage to any target, and you gain 3 life. So not quite Lightning Helix, but close. Close. This card is a good late, good early, just giving yourself a little bit extra wiggle room as far as combat's concerned. I don't believe there's any double strike creatures in this set, so getting the most out of Integrity is just gonna be +2/+2. Yeah, that's about it. So solid cards. Let's see here. So these are the trap cards, right? So these cards, these are, I'm trying to think how to say this. Gird of Battle, put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures for 1 mana. It's all right, but if you've got a better creature, put the creature in play. Use the creature. Don't use a spell. Make them have the removal spell, right? make them have the removal. I know we've said a couple times if this creature, if this creature could get +1 on its defense, it'd be fantastic. There's other ways to do that, and on top of that, Boros is attacking, always attacking, right? So 1 mana for 2 power is, and it's just begging. It's just begging for a removal spell to kind of blow you out. So avoid this card if you can. Sure Strike, again, it's kind of in the same boat. It's at instant speed, so it's a little bit better than the battle card. First Strike doesn't matter nearly as much, I think, to Boros, just because some of these creatures are so small. But on the other hand, getting the +3/+0 does make it a little bit better. I still say play a creature, right? I think this is going to be a creature-heavy deck. I really do. If you can get another, mentor in there or another flyer in there, I think that is much better suited than a spell. I really do. Now this card seems like a trap, and it very well could be. I think it's more of a trap in like the other red deck, like the Boros, or not the Boros, the Izzet deck, right? This card dealing 1 damage to each creature your opponent controls. Creatures your opponents control can't block this turn, right? So this is kind of like your win condition, right? You've attacked 4 or 5 times, you got them down to like 2 or 3, and they've built out their board, and now you're at a stall, right? Turn 5, play this down. Turn 6, play this down, and you're like 1 damage, and they can't block. Swing in, finish the game for 4 mana, right? That's the only time you're going to play this card. So, let's see here. Some other cards that might be traps, that are more likely to be traps. Candlelight Vigil's next. 4 mana. Enchant creature gets +3/+2 and has Vigilance. Again, enchantments are just bad, right? And again, I go back and say, giving a creature, better toughness is great, but you got to remember that this card took a slot in your 40 card deck. Don't do it. Put a creature on there in this place, whether it's a 1/1, a 2/2, something that can be targeted with your mentors. If you don't have a mentor heavy deck, put another mentor in there, right? Give yourself ample targets for those abilities. This is just begging to be blown out. Take Heart is 1 mana. Target creature gets +2/+2 until end turn. You gain 1 life for each attacking creature. I'll tell you why this is a joke and why this is a trap is because new players are going to say, "Oh, +2/+2 is great," and then I gain a life for all the creatures that I'm attacking with. This is going to cause poor players and new players to attack recklessly. I guarantee it. Right? They're going to be like, "Oh, well, I can, if I attack with all 5 of these guys, I'm going to gain all this life." Well, you're going to gain all that life, and then the blocks are going to go against you, and then you're just going to take that 5 damage right back. So effectively, what you've done is killed, is give something +2/+2. Hopefully, you got through some damage with that, or remove some of their creatures. But at the end of the day, I just see this is not working. Now, kind of going back to the Charismatic Wave, Street Riot is kind of a similar ability, right? It's 5 mana, so one mana more. As long as it's your turn, creatures you control get +1/+0 and have trample. I would say if you don't have the wave, use the Riot, right? The Riot is significantly worse because now you have to worry about creatures trampling over and creatures dying and things like that. The wave works great because it's as simple as paying 4 mana. You can't block with any of these guys, and I'm swinging in. Game over. If you've done your mentoring correctly and you've built a proper mentor deck, this actually could be pretty powerful. But at the end of the day, you're trying to finish the game, right? So the cheaper spell, much better. It's going to get rid of some of the smaller crap that they have laying on the battlefield. But effectively, that doesn't matter because you're looking to end the game right there, right? That attack step, nothing, no later. So some cards you might want to add to the Boros deck, right? So we talked a lot about 2/2s, 3/3s, 4/4s, and things like that, but not really a lot of ways to end the game. And one of the things that the Boros Legion is really, really good at is putting out small creatures that are great early game, but are really, really bad late game because they don't attack well, unless, of course, you have that wave, which they, hallelujah. But adding some of these green cards to your deck is going to be a great way to finish the game once you've got them down to 5, once you got them down to 10, kind of finishing out those last few turns. The other thing with green, especially in Silencia or only in Silencia, is you've got Convoke. So you can utilize those 1/1s, those 2/2s, those goblins that give haste, before you sacrifice them. You could tap them and play your Siege Worm for 5, for less mana than 7, and then you can sacrifice the goblin to give the Siege Worm haste, and now you're attacking in with a 5/5 Trampler. The Guild Mage, again, creatures you control gain trample until end of turn. That is 1 green mana, tap this 2/2, trample for everybody, right? And then it also has the 1 white mana created 2/2 with Vigilance. That's okay. You're really in it for the trample. These are the cards you're trying to finish with. The Elemental, again, has Hexproof. It's going to be hard to remove. It's got Convoke. It doesn't have Trample, right? But if you've got a way to give it Trample, or you can just get some things out of, get some guys out of the way. Again, this might cause them to not be able to block your 3 1/1s, right? Or your, a couple 2/2s or your 1/1s or whatever. So if you can attack all in, force some bad blocks, drop a pump spell or whatever the case may be, it's got hexproof, so it's not going to get removed. So, all right, guys, that's it. Thanks for watching. Make sure you get subscribed, leave a comment. We'll be back tomorrow for our Silencia and Golgari? Yeah, we're talking those. Yeah, Golgari and Silencia tomorrow. So thanks for watching. Make sure you leave a comment and all that good stuff. We really appreciate it. And we will see you guys tomorrow. Thanks for watching.